Drew here. Let's talk about Sunday the Ghost. I have a theory about this episode that what we see happen might not be what actually is going on, that there might be a deeper level of meaning beneath the surface. But I want to be very, very careful not to create a Dark Knight Rises situation where I'm not reading into this things that aren't there. But I think there is a possible interpretation that doesn't entirely accord with what we see happening just on the surface. So say goodbye to Jude Law's face, because this is the last episode where he will be the lead. Naomie Harris is going to take over, and I like her a lot as an actress, but I do feel like I'm not sure if this is going to work as well without Jude Law and the character of Sam. I'm not sure how well she'll do if she's given the same treatment that Jude Law was given in this episode. I'm also a little bit concerned because Philippa Lowthorpe is taking over as director, and one of her top IMDb credits is Call of the Midwife. So obviously I think that this could take a dip in directing quality. I've heard some people describe the next 3 episodes as an inferior sequel to the first 3. So that would be disappointing, and I'll make a determination as those episodes come out whether I want to keep reviewing this. But I really liked this episode. I thought it was a good conclusion. A lot happened. I felt like it was interesting how, as this was from the creator of the Channel 4 series Utopia, you also see some similarities in how the villains, quotation marks, view themselves as heroes and, in a sense, saviors of the world, that they're carrying out these sacrifices, these horrible actions for the good of humanity. You can see a thematic parallel there. And I felt that Mrs. Martin, she didn't get a lot of development as a character. I think that this series relied an awful lot on the performances of its actors to flesh out the script. But it was interesting to see this thought process in her mind and how the character justified what she was doing, that she was seeking to protect the soul of the world, which Sam really should have guessed after the first time she turned him over to the bad guys. And this episode, again, there was a lot of very, very haunting imagery, a lot of frightening moments. It was very stylistically extreme, as with the previous episodes. If you don't like Jude Law's face, you probably hate this show because it gets a lot of screen time in various degrees of close-up and various degrees of exposure and focus. And it was interesting, all the different emotions that Jude Law had to play this episode. I feel like he did a fantastic job. What does the grasshopper mean? Apparently, it means either death or that rain is coming, that there's going to be an end to the drought. But I think that within this story, I think it was kind of a visual representation of the evil in this community. And I found it interesting. Jess eventually betrayed Sam. I kind of saw this coming the minute that Sam turned his back to her. I'm like, he's going to turn around and she's going to have that darn gun pointing at him. Why doesn't he see this coming? He saw it coming with the other guy on the boat, but somehow he just assumed that Jess was on his side, I guess because he thought she was an outsider like him. Which brings up the question, how long was she in on it, and was she trying to keep him on the island the whole time? They gave her daughters back to her once she returned Sam to the island, so I kind of suspect that she was in on it the whole time and that they had tapped her to keep an eye on him because they knew he wouldn't suspect her because he would think that she was one of the locals. And once you realize their whole goal was to bring him to the island and to keep him on the island, then you have to wonder if it wasn't part of that she asked him to come to the party with her on the second night. But this is just a theory. It's a little bit unclear and ambiguous how long she was working with them and how long she was trying to keep him on the island. The biggest reveal, of course, is that Sam is the son of the founder of this island, and that they want him there as the father who can preserve this island as the soul of the world, and that his son is still alive, and that some of the people here want to kill Sam so that his son can take over and be a good father for the island, because they can't get rid of their current father until they have a replacement set up that they know will work, and Sam wants nothing to do with it. And this episode, really, a lot of it was just Sam trying not to get killed and trying to get off the island. There were some tense and frightening scenes. There were some very frustrating scenes as Sam gave every effort to get off the island and just wasn't able to. And ultimately, he ends up, when he sees his son taking him, going into the house, and seemingly accepting the role as father. And this is what seems to happen on the surface. Now, my theory, and I admit this comes a little bit from some of the similarities to this ending and the ending of Inception, where he's so focused on the son that he has had returned to him that he doesn't pay any attention to the grasshoppers that just swarm the island, or locusts as they may be. And once you look at the symbolism of that, I question if Sam wasn't dead the whole time. Now, hear me out. They talked about the fact that he was having a psychotic break. He thought that someone had taken the money from him, but he actually had the money the whole time. Now, why did they make such a big deal out of these psychotic breaks? Well, my theory is that because the whole story was meant to be seen as potentially a psychotic break, that perhaps he participated in the threefold death. We saw all these visions of the threefold death during these episodes, of him being disemboweled, of him being burned in the trailer, of him drowning, and that ultimately he died. And this whole last sequence where he's reunited with his son, and basically the whole last episode, is a psychotic break at the time of his death. Now, I think that you could probably find reasons that this might not be the case, and I think you could probably find a lot of things that would support this theory. I'm not saying that this is the only way to interpret this. I'm just saying I think that this could be a possible interpretation of it. But I think that it's interesting because if you look at it that way, then this is still basically a variation of Wicker Man, but just underneath the surface. But again, I don't think I can really prove that that's what's going on. I just think that that's a working theory. And a large part of it, again, goes back to all the times where he talks about psychotic breaks. Another part of it is the symbolism of the grasshopper. You can look at the grasshopper as two different things. You can look at it as a sign that rain is coming, and you can look at it as a sign of death coming. We see the grasshopper get on the henchman who tried to kill Sam's head during the scene in which they're baptizing him into the cult. And that character, I believe, died shortly after. Now, I did see him in the teaser for the next 3 episodes, so perhaps he didn't die. But in any case, if you view it as a symbol of death, then perhaps the grasshoppers swarming the island could be seen as a sign that Sam is passing on into death. And if you view it as a sign that rain is coming, then you could say, well, that's just a sign that the island, the drought is over and there's about to be a hopeful future for the island. Either way, I think makes sense from my perspective. So I enjoyed this series. I kind of like my theory better than the just straight what you see is what you get theory, which is probably what most people will come away with. I'm not sure how many people will even theorize what I came up with. I doubt I'll be the only one, but I think that it would add a little bit of depth and another layer of meaning to this story if that was something that the creator had intended. So those are just my thoughts. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. If you're interested in seeing my upcoming reviews of other shows and movies, and if you'd give me a like, I'd really appreciate it. And as always, you can watch more videos right now.